Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hi everyone and welcome to the show. It's Trevor Stockwell here with you today, along with our guest Caterina. Now before I introduce her, let me ask you this. How successful are your team meetings? So with staff, with partners, or whoever. Could it be that you think they're great, but actually nobody else does? Or do you see them as a necessary evil that's just part of the process of being a business owner or a leader? Well, stay tuned because our guest today, Caterina, specializes amongst other things in how to hold successful meetings. She's an executive coach and she helps leaders, entrepreneurs and teams maximize their impact and fulfillment. She's coached leaders at many of the top companies you will have heard of, like Google, Amazon, Ferrero, etc., and was also previously the global business leader at Google as well. She then founded her own coaching business called Leaderpath, and she's now written a book which is going to be published this year called Hold Successful Meetings. So welcome, Caterina Kostoula. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Trevor. Very happy to be here today.
Good. It's great to have the opportunity to chat with you and plumb your expertise with regards to managing teams as well as managing meetings. So hopefully we can get into both of those topics. But before we dig too much into that at the moment, share a little bit about your background and your journey so far to get you to where you are now.
Sure. So I've launched the Leaderpath. I focused exclusively on the Leaderpath, I have to say, in 2018 when I left my job at Google. I was at Google for 8 years as a global business leader. Before that, I did an INSEAD MBA and I'm an INSEAD entrepreneur coach now. Before that, I worked in advertising and I'm of Greek origin. And the last 3 years, I'm a business owner, I'm an executive coach, a team coach, and now an author too.
Sounds good. Yeah. So do you know exactly when your book is out? It's fairly imminent.
15th of April. 15th of April is the date.
Perfect. Okay. Well, let's jump straight in with regards to meetings, because I've sat in meetings I wish I hadn't, and I've conducted some meetings which other people wish I hadn't as well. So I can learn some things as well. But what are some of the kind of, from your experience, what are some of the mistakes that people make when it comes to meetings in general?
Sure. I would say the biggest mistake is holding meetings for the wrong reason. And I have to say, I wrote a book about it called Hold Successful Meetings. It's part of the Penguin Business Expert series because I struggled with meetings. When I was at Google in a big company, my corporate career, I looked at my calendar and I felt frustrated or oppressed by so many internal meetings. And then when I started coaching leaders, they were suffering from boring, frustrating, ineffective meetings, too many meetings. So I think it's a real pain point. The biggest mistake is holding meetings to give an update or do status reports. And that's because a lot of the time this convenience for the leader is more convenient for the leader. Instead of writing an hour email, I say, let's have a meeting, half an hour, you give your update, you're done, back to work. But then if you have an 8-people team, for example, it took you 4.5 hours. You took 4.5 hours from the business to give that update. And it's true, as you said, as the leaders rate their own meetings better than the team does. That's research. So we never know. We think our meetings are better than they are. And I can talk to you a little bit about when to have a meeting, if that would be of interest.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I have developed a framework. It's called 4D meeting framework. And according to my research, there are only 4 reasons to hold a meeting. And I think that can be practical and easy for our listeners to take away. 4 Ds, they all start with a D. So here they are. Are you ready to hear the 4 reasons to hold a meeting that are good reasons?
Yeah.
So the first one is define a problem or a goal. The second is develop ideas. The third is decide, make a decision. And the fourth one is to do something, whether in the meeting or afterward. So define, develop, decide, or do, which are good reasons to have a meeting, because to achieve all of those things, you need more brain power, or you'll develop more ideas and better ideas, or you make better decisions. And also there can be stages in your meeting. Like you could say, now we'll define the problem, then we'll develop ideas. Like thinking the 4D meeting framework will help you have a more effective meeting as well.
Okay, so define, being like casting vision. This is where the company's going. This is where we want to go. From that perspective, do you mean more?
So it depends on what the meeting is about. So there is the purpose of the team, but also it could be, let's say, let's hold a meeting because our sales are down, right? This is the topic of the meeting.
Yep.
Before we start solving this, we need to define what the problem is. So it will be a defined meeting where I'll ask the team, okay, the sales are down. Where's the problem? And then people will speak and they will see at the data. And let's say the sales are down because specifically one salesperson is not converting well. So everybody's you will define it, whether looking at the data, whether sharing information, and then you might define the problem. And a good way to define the problem is how might we? It could be how might we help John close more deals? That's the problem definition. And most people skip that. They will go directly on like throwing random ideas or without actually having defined the problem. What's the problem we're here to solve? And I think it's the most crucial step, really, not to waste your time leading teams and leading meetings.
Yeah. So that touches quite a lot on the coaching element as well, doesn't it? Really, it's almost like building a meeting with a coaching element, even if you don't label it as coaching, because people have different experiences with coaching, and for whatever reason, some of them are less open to it than others, or less understanding what it actually does. But yeah, getting people to think through specific issues, but also corporately within the team, within the meeting, get everyone involved, rather than having a culture of blame of it's John's fault. He's the one, who's the reason why. It could be, John could be covering somebody else's job while they're not doing well, while they've got issues outside of work. X, Y, Z, lots of different reasons why John might not be performing well. But yeah, I like what you said about it's having the space within the meeting, because you've defined what the issue is, to then try and troubleshoot and problem solve it from there. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, now that's the define. Can we go through each of the 4Ds in a little bit more detail?
Yes, I'm glad you're interested about this.
Definitely, yeah.
So develop ideas. We know about this. Most of the people do the traditional brainstorming, which, by the way, does not work. So there is, again, plenty of research. And brainstorming does not work. What's brainstorming? It is, let's all throw ideas, many ideas, let's not judge them, which is good because it separates divergent thinking, convergent thinking, which is important when you want to be creative. You shouldn't be judging the ideas. The reason it doesn't work is because you're asking people to do it at the same time. So some people will have social anxiety. They will not share ideas because they're shy and they're afraid of judgment. While they're listening to other people's ideas, they're not producing their own. So you have fewer ideas overall. So there are several reasons why traditional brainstorming does not work. So in the book, I offer a lot of techniques, but some practical tips for our listeners is have people write down the ideas individually first. With that simple, very practical tip, you will increase exponentially the quality and quantity of ideas. A second tip would be, if you can, try to get a visual element. If people can draw the idea, because it engages a more creative part of our brains. So these are a couple of tips to have a better ideation meetings with the team.
Yeah, we think in pictures, don't we, a lot of the time? So anything visual, it really helps. So would that be at the start of the meeting or part of the meeting, first off, before the discussion happens about ideas? it's the jot things down then, or take the approach of this is what we're going to talk about in the meeting, come with ideas already, or kind of a mixture of the two?
You can do both. I'm assuming here you're not going to develop states unless you have defined the issue properly or the goal properly. So if you have defined, we are assuming that. You can ask for people to come with ideas in the meeting. You can ask, there's electronic brainstorming. You can even do it asynchronously. There's a lot of apps online that you could have the whole organization, if it's a global organization, submitting ideas. There's this, there was a software tool tested in MIT that you could submit your idea and then randomly it will show you someone else's idea to stimulate your thinking. It could be a Google Doc that people jot their ideas down. So there's a lot of ways. You don't have to do it synchronously. Develop meetings. You can do either way. But if you have to have a meeting, because you do want as a second part to have the element of people stimulating each other's thinking.
Yeah. Cool.
There was some research for 50 years, they looked 19 million scientific papers and 2 million patents. And what they discovered is that the scientific papers submitted by a team were cited twice as often as that of individuals. So we need other people. We need a team to really be innovative, really, to have a patent or to have a scientific paper. You need something innovative, and it's proven that teams produce better work than individuals.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Just slightly going off tangent, although we will circle back to that, I think, anyway, hopefully if we get time. Why do you think that is? The kind of the corporate output is better?
Not necessarily the corporate, but the team output, right? I think because the way we think, we need stimuli for our ideas. So think about the Wright brothers, right? Inventing the airplane. According to their journals, they had very close collaborations. Think about Paul McCartney, like the Beatles. They were sharing, the two Beatle singers, they were sharing profits equally, and every song had both their names because they were collaborating in the creative process. So I think there's something around getting stimulus from each other.
Yeah.
Your idea stimulates something in mine, and challenging and creating something better than each of us would have created on our own.
Yeah, I know what you mean on that. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. A lot of the long-term bands have a certain chemistry when they come together, kind of like the Beatles and lots of the others, whereas 4 individual musicians doing their own thing, not going to have the same effect. There's something about it, isn't it? It's not magic, but there's just something that, yeah, maybe we draw the creativity out of each other when we get around certain people. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure if we've managed to suss out exactly the remedy or the ingredients for that. Maybe we'll be millionaires. I don't know. but yeah, you know when it doesn't work around certain people, and you just know when it does. And that seems to be the way. What would you say though with regards to, say, you've just taken over a team. They don't know you that well. We've got into the team bit, haven't we? I knew we'd get there. We'll go back to meetings in a bit as well. But you've got this team. They don't know you that well. You're still kind of building credibility in the relationships. But they're very dysfunctional because past culture has been very accusational. I'm thinking of an example a friend of mine's been in, mentioning no names, but they were very the culture was accusational. They would call people out in the meeting and criticize what they do. Definitely the bad thing to do from my perspective. But someone then that takes on that team, what would you say would be a couple of steps that they could take maybe before the meeting and once the meeting starts that could kind of alleviate some of those fears or the anxiety or the dysfunction? Because the reason why I'm asking is because you can approach a meeting believing that it's going to be exactly like the last meeting. And as you take on a new team, you want to make sure that you can create a different environment to change it. So it's a big question, but just, is there a couple of things that you could think of that I can tell my friend, but also for the people listening.
Yes. This is a scenario for me because I'm a team coach, right? I get the call when there is toxic culture in the team or whether there's a new team. So I have to deal with this all the time. First, I would say, and this is the most important than everything in meetings and teams, is psychological safety. And I learned about psychological safety, the concept, when I was still working at Google. Google did a research on 180 teams, successful and unsuccessful, and they were trying to figure out what made successful teams successful, and they just couldn't crack the code. The individual performance didn't matter, consensus decision making didn't matter, whether they were located in the same office didn't matter. Like, they just couldn't figure it out until they saw the research of psychological safety. So first of all, let's start from there. And unless people feel safe that to bring ideas, to bring mistakes, that they won't be personally attacked or have negative consequences, it doesn't matter how good of a leader, of how good of individual performance you have, you will fail. First, let's start with this. This is important to be able to, as a leader, that's what you start. So I would say what we do is start the meeting by sharing something personal, if you can, that has helped people connect at a personal level, maybe have some social time. Try to build the trust. That's something we can do. Another thing, if it's such a toxic culture, I actually hold the mirror to the group, I identify the 4 toxic behaviors. So you have 4 toxic behaviors, and that was done in marriages, the research done in marriages. And one is criticism and blame, which looks like your friends, they have this accusation, but there are other forms. Sarcasm is a toxic behavior. Defensiveness is a toxic behavior. Stonewalling is the 4th toxic behavior, like not talking and shutting down. Yeah. So what I've done in the past is just wrote the 4 toxic behaviors in 4 papers on the floor. And I said, let's stand up and let's walk and stand on the toxic behavior we think it exists in the group. And I have them vote without talking, just walking and standing. And in their case, it could be criticism, I assume, or blame. Usually it's defensiveness, like that's the one I see more often. And then I say, how about you personally? What's the toxic behavior you display when you have a bad day? Because all of us, we default in these behaviors when we have a bad day. So I have them take some responsibility about this toxicity. So they vote with their legs again. And then we sit down and discuss what are the cases that this displays. So this is an exercise I could recommend to your friend maybe to do.
Yeah. And within marriages, relationships, that would also be, but it works both ways, doesn't it? I suppose, in business.
Absolutely.
And no, that's key, actually. Yeah, I think a lot of it, from what you're saying, recognizing the behaviors that people are behaving in, it can go a long way to changing an atmosphere. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's good. So let's pause that again. Let's jump back in. We've covered 2 Ds. Let's go for the 3rd D, can we?
Yes, making decisions. So a mistake I see here is people are not clear how the decision will be made. Even the process, whether me as a business owner, I will make the decision, I'm just consulting the team. Will we vote in the end? So is it a majority rule decision? Will there be a consensus? Do we all have to agree? And I think the business owner, you usually have in their mind how the decision will be made, but it's not clear. And that can lead to frustration, because if you are going to make the decision, make it clear that you're consulting people, but you will decide in the end. Because otherwise they may think they have a vote and they may get frustrated. So that's one I would say, like practical tip, make it clear in the beginning, how will the decision be made?
That's good.
The second, I would say, because even if groups make better, diverse groups, not any groups, diverse groups make better decisions than individuals, they can still make bad decisions. There's still traps in a group, like they can have bigger sunk cost fallacy or groupthink. We all know there's traps in group decision making. And the best tool you can have, going back to your previous comment, is productive conflict. Not toxic conflict, not absence of conflict. You need productive conflict. So it's a fine balance, right? Because you don't want people personally attacking each other. That's counterproductive. But you don't want people being so kind that actually in the meeting they don't share disagreements.
Yeah, it's all the passive aggressive people just nodding and smiling, isn't it? And
Exactly.
and then outside the meeting, hell breaks loose. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really good actually. I like the way you put that. Yeah, keep going. Go on. I could butt in, but I won't. Go on, keep going.
Should we move to the fourth D?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
One more. Okay. So the fourth one is do. And here there are three types of meetings. One, they're the working sessions, like from hackathons, or let's share screens and do something together, like do work in the meeting.
Yeah.
Then there are the action planning. We are actually talking about implementation. So, for example, when I'm I have a meeting with my assistant tomorrow. It's a do meeting. Like we're going through the tasks, and then there's the inspire action meetings. A sales meeting is an inspire action meeting. I would say even our conversation today, I want to inspire people to have better meetings. Like the purpose is a do meeting, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to do, every time I'm trying to think, which D are we doing now? And a lot of speeches are do meetings because your goal is to inspire people to do something. Some tips here. The working sessions, I think people, I don't see any mistake on working sessions. Like have few people. You don't need a huge group working together all the time. I want to focus more on action planning and inspiring action, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So in action planning, we are bad at this. This is called the planning fallacy. We always fail. Like we budget less time, less money. You know this. Like these meetings are always, most of the times, a failure due to the planning fallacy. And actually, groups are worse in the planning fallacy than people. We're over optimistic. It will take less time than it usually does. So I have some tips here. For example, compare to similar projects. Do milestones, break it down to milestones. These are the two tips I would say, trying to avoid the planning fallacy. Have some general rules, for example, for your team, because when they go and implement, the plan will break down, right? We know that the plan doesn't survive contact with the enemy. That's what the military said. So how about having some general rules, like the military does, to actually guide them on the day-to-day when you won't be there? So that's another tip I would have for action planning meetings. Rather than trying to do every single detail in the meeting, how about really explaining what's the guideline for them to make the small decisions in the implementation?
Yeah. So that's kind of more just being a lot more agile, isn't it? About we know where we're going, but we're going to make it up on the way, which sounds a bit suicidal. It's not, if you understand agile. But yes, it's more fluid, isn't it? There's more flexibility and openness for change, rather than this is what the boss said, we have to do it. It's falling apart, but this is what we have to do. That just traps people, doesn't it? Like you say, it's just not helpful. That in a lot of ways comes back to empowering the team members, isn't it? If they know that they have the confidence of the leader, the boss, whatever position that might be, and although the buck stops with the boss, ultimately, if they're empowered and responsible for a certain aspect or certain tasks, then assuming that they're competent enough, they've been trained enough, got the experience, whatever they need, or the support that they can call upon, they're able to then do their part. And also, when things go slightly pear-shaped, as you said, they do. That's all part of life. They feel empowered enough that they've got the backing of the boss to be able to make decisions, or to flag it up and raise it higher if they need input from someone outside of their responsibility. Yeah, I think that's a key thing. I think a lot of the thing that leaders don't do within teams is empower people enough with confidence that they can make decision making decisions that weren't spoken about in the brief. It's initiative, isn't it, really? And there is a balance to that. You want to give people enough space to operate, but not enough rope to hang themselves, metaphorically.
I love that.
There is that juggling act. But there's also, from what you said, it's like failure is almost part of the process, which, again, mitigated, should be embraced as life. Things happen, technology changes, suppliers, whatever, competitors launch something that we weren't expecting, all the sort of things you have to adjust to. But at least you've empowered the team to kind of follow through and learn and be creative as they go, to some extent. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that does. And it goes back to your third D, where if the boss comes into the meeting and just tells everybody what's going to happen, asks for their opinion, but isn't going to take any notice, they're just going to do what he wants anyway. But at least he's asked them, so he feels he's given them opportunity to speak, even though, there is no point to the meeting. That's the pitfall, isn't it? The boss might be thinking that he's helping them, but he's actually deceived because he's already made his mind up that as long as I ask, I don't have to take any notice of what they say.
I think you're right here. I don't think one decision-making process is better than the other. Like, you can have consensus, majority rule, or consultative for different types of decisions. And there are decisions that the boss needs to make.
Yeah.
But you're right. If it is consultative, at least consult. If you've made up your mind already, they will know, and they will be frustrated.
Yeah.
So it's okay to say, this is a decision I'll make, but I'd love to hear your input. I don't think it's something bad with that. Like, sometimes the leader needs to make a decision. I don't think always we should go for consensus. Or actually, companies like Amazon and Google hate consensus because it's really slow. And a lot of companies that fail is because they pursue consensus and they have meetings upon meetings until everyone agrees, and then the boat has left the harbor, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're right. It's not about one being better than the other. It's being deliberate. This is how we're going to make the decision. And if you've made the decision, don't have a meeting. You're right. Like, there's no point of putting a charade on to pretend you're a participatory decision maker.
Yeah. Yeah. People spot authenticity and the absence of it, don't they? Very quickly. I think it's one of the human nature kind of things that we just have built in, which is very helpful at times. So yeah, no, that's good. This is all good stuff. Let's touch a bit more on the team side of it, can we? For now, we have already spoken to some extent on it, but just what would be some of the things you've learned or the things you've seen where certain teams outperform other teams? What would be the reasons for that, as well as kind of the things you've touched on already about psychological safety and being able to be creative, being able to share their ideas? But are there any other kind of tips or experiences that you've seen that could really help a team move from kind of being mediocre or low performing to improving their results?
Yeah. So given we start with psychological safety because it's been proven to be the most important factor, I would say a team purpose is important. And I interviewed for my book Professor Peter Hawkins. He's one of the thought leaders in team coaching and in this space. Mm-hmm. And he told me a purpose should be forward, back, and outward, from the future to now, and from the outside inside. And what he means by that is he asks teams, what does the future need from us, and what do our stakeholders need from us? So it's not around making a purpose or creating a purpose. It's actually around discovering the purpose that's already there. What does the world need? What does the future need from the team? And I think that's a lovely take of how to align the team in a common purpose. And we know as humans, we need meaning.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more powerful than a great high-performing team pursuing a worthy purpose. That's what has always changed the world as we know.
Yeah.
So having a worthy purpose will help the team perform better. I usually do some work on values because I think they help the team as well. I'm against culture fit, by the way. I think that was why we have not diverse teams. Like, we were always hiring people for culture fit, and that meant we were hiring people like us. So, no, I don't agree with that. I would say hire a diverse team, hire different people than you, but then do some work with the team to say, what are our values as a team? You need alignment on the values. You don't need alignment on the profile.
Yeah.
And the way I do that with teams is I say, okay, let's think of a really high performer that if we could clone them, we would dominate the market. What do they have? Like, what their attributes? What are the values this high performer has in the company? That's one of the ways I will work on values. I think it helps bring the team together. Clear roles and responsibilities also, even though it's never clear because it's always evolving and moving, but that's a conversation I have a lot of the times with the teams, because that creates a lot of friction and pain points of conflicts between departments and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
No, go on. I thought you were going to say something else.
These are the thoughts I have on this. It's a huge topic.
Yeah. I think diversity of teams workforce is huge, and I agree. I think it's been overlooked a lot, and it kind of comes back to how do I know I'm not making the best decisions if I've surrounded myself with everybody like me, or the psychological safety, everybody that's just going to say, yeah, that's great, let's go with that boss. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like you have to create that environment where they can challenge you. There's respect that needs to be mixed into all of that, but you give people that place. And having people from diverse experiences, cultures, and all the rest of it, it's the best melting pot if there's the safety to have the discussion. And like you say, the right kind of conflict. You have to encourage it in the right way for the best outcome for the team to prevail, isn't it? If I'm the leader and I think, I'm always going to have the best decision, I have limited the whole team to my viewpoint.
Absolutely.
That's just crazy, isn't it?
And I think that's where the 4D framework helps, because when it's develop ideas or decide, you want conflict, you want variety. When you have when you're clear, this is a decide meeting, you actually encourage conflict. You said this for important decisions, right? You wouldn't need a meeting but for important decisions that are irreversible, for example, you say, this is a decide meeting and I want conflict. It's an important decision. I want to hear everyone. When it's a do meeting, you don't necessarily, you want everyone to be rowing towards the same direction because the decision has been made. You want to implement, you want to align. So it's a different meeting. So it's not, in a do meeting, it's not about conflict. It's about, let's all commit to this. We don't necessarily have to agree. We will never agree to everything, but let's commit to that decision and let's see how we can make it a success. And then you bring everyone together and you want alignment. That's not what you want when you're making a decision. You were right.
Yeah. If you have the do meeting before you've decided, you're just waiting, aren't you? Yeah. No, there's a lot of wisdom in that. Yeah. No, that's really good. We've almost come to the end of our time together for today. But is there anything that I haven't asked you that you wanted to share with us, either from the book or just on the topic that we've spoken about? Or do you feel we've certainly nailed a lot of practical things people can put into practice straight away, but was there any other burning thing that I haven't asked you, or do you feel you've covered it well enough?
I've covered a lot of ground, Trevor, with your skillful interviewing. I would say let's stop settling for bad meetings, because bad meetings make us exhausted. They demotivate our staff. And especially now with COVID, the Zoom fatigue, I would say to leaders, you should have fewer meetings, but purposeful. You should have meeting-free blocks. I have 2 days a week that I don't do any meeting, for example, to do deep work. I think we all need to allow ourselves to be very strategic about our meetings and make them count, because it's so expensive to be real time together. It's expensive and valuable, and it should be unique and should be leveraged to create great things. Because it's true, the lonely genius is a myth. We need other people, but we should treat real time interaction as the precious thing that it is. Have fewer meetings, more purposeful meetings, protect individual work time, because that will help us actually create things individually too. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to. My burning platform is, let's change this. It doesn't have to be like this, that we're in back-to-back horrible meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. When there's more engagement, and as an attendee, if I'm turning up at a meeting and I know I've got an option of either sharing something or participating in the hands-on stuff, I'm much more engaged, aren't I? Just by default, I want to be there. Whereas if it's, we've got to listen to the boss talk for a couple of hours, lots of slides, lots of graphs, who cares kind of thing. There's no engagement, is there? There's no, like you say, it's information passing on, and just like, it doesn't work.
My boss, Kirk Perry at Google, you know what he did? He was doing video selfies, and he would send us the video. And I think that's most valuable, because he would still do the update, but it didn't need to be real time. We didn't need to have there and all hands meetings. Like I love the videos, because he would go into an important meeting. Then after the meeting, he will do like on the car a selfie, talking to the YouTube video selfie, talking to the team, and he would send it, and I will watch it in the end of the day whenever I wanted to. Like, there are alternatives for updates and this type of meetings.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And by doing that, you're enabling the individual to watch and to listen at their peak moment of the day, regardless. It's not all at 9:30 in the morning for everybody, is it? Depending what else they've been on, and if they've worked late the night before, and lots of different variables. But that's a really good way of doing it.
It's like moving from the old type of TV to on demand, right? Like, our media consumption has changed to on demand. Meetings have never changed, though. You see, like business communications, they haven't evolved to on demand like everything else.
Yeah, that's it. And I think a lot of it is we fall into the trap of, I've been in meetings like this. This is what meetings are. I need to do the same. And it's like, no, it really isn't. Just think outside the box, isn't it? Really. Let's be creative about that, because we are all different, and we do need that different levels of engagement. So thank you for what you've shared with us in this conversation. You've got a website. Is that the best place for people to touch base with you?
Yes. And I have, if you go to the leaderpath.com/meetings, I do have a quiz people can do to see how successful they are at their meetings and get some personalized results.
Nice.
As we told in the beginning, sometimes we think our meetings are better than they are. So you can have the quiz. You can order the book. It's sold everywhere books are sold. It's called Hold Successful Meetings, Penguin Business Expert Series. And again, in the leaderpath.com/meetings, you will find bonuses, materials like PDFs to download for tech tools for meetings. You can find a lot of information about this.
Wow. That's generous. Thank you very much. Yeah, I will dig into that a little bit more. I did have a look at your site before we spoke. I did see there was a few freebies and stuff, but yes, I will dig into that after our discussion. So thank you for that. And for coaching as well, people want to hire you as a coach. That's the best place to kind of touch base first and
yes,
see what you're doing and how you can help them. So that's how. I know you do a lot more than just talk about successful meetings, as important and as key as that is, and you do build teams and stuff. The whole coaching side of it with executives is almost like a different element to that. So although we've not touched on it here, it's a very important thing that you do. So anybody listening, yes, talk to Caterina, get in touch, explore how she can help you. There's lots of different ways that she can help you. Your team will thank you for it, I'm sure. But it's kind of just remembering, we are closing this episode off now, but we're all on a journey. So wherever you are, whatever you've heard from Caterina today, put something into practice, make your life better, make the team interaction better over time, but you have to start somewhere, and you can do it. None of this is too difficult for you to do, but you have to be intentional about it. So that's all from us for now. We are signing off for this episode. Thanks again, Caterina, for your time and your input today. It's been amazing. I will definitely listen to this again and take better notes second time round. But no, appreciate you sharing with us. And for everybody as well, jump onto Caterina's website. Wait for the book as well, because it will be out shortly. If you're hearing this just before it's launched, put something in your calendar and get the book when it comes out. You'll be glad that you did. Thanks all. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.